Thank you all for staying after church. This is wonderful. I'm so happy to see such a good crowd. Our presentation today is hosted by the Reconciliation Ministry. And let's see, who do we have here? Becky and Carrie. Who else is here from our group? Edward, John, excellent. I want to thank Susan Van Dyne and Meg Daner for the great treats. I think we have plenty left. Please go back for seconds. I also want to thank Tammy Schroeder for helping set up. I don't see Tammy, but she was really instrumental in getting all this, figuring out how to make this work. Our hearts have been broken so many times by the gory mass murders of children in this country. There is nothing that can be said that is equal to the horror and anger that so many of us feel. No words are sufficient. What do we do with these feelings when it happens over and over and seems to be becoming normalized? Today we'll talk about something that we can do. Temple grew up here in FPC, participating in youth choir and youth group through high school. She has fond memories of lock-ins and playing sardines, which I too have played. When her children were little, she taught Sunday school, following her mother's footsteps, who had previously taught at Old Brick. Temple is a longtime gun violence prevention advocate and activist, and a veteran of the First Gulf War. Her personal experience of gun suicide by a member of her family informs her understanding of the sensible steps that we can take to prevent gun violence. She is the chair of Moms Demand Action of Johnson County. It is my great pleasure to introduce Temple Hiatt.
Thank you, Jane, and to the congregation for the opportunity to be with you all today. I'm going to take a little extra time in introducing myself because coming here today feels like coming home. And in coming home, that comes with a lot of mixed emotions, of course. I can sum up my faith in 6 words: love, 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 service, service, service. That's it. I grew up here admiring the work so many of the women were doing in our church, and I still aspire to be like them. I haven't been around much over the last 7 years. It's been a rough time for me. In the church, we often talk about callings, and I don't know why, but I felt a calling to do more. And I was tired of the dialogue around what a veteran looks like. I'm not a white male who idolizes and covets guns. And as someone who's been trained to use many weapons of war, I understand gun safety. When I met another veteran who was involved with gun safety efforts, I knew this was something I needed to be a part of. After the Las Vegas mass shooting, I became involved with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And I discovered I was considered a gun violence survivor because someone I cared about and cared for died by gun suicide. So I share my survivor story because I know there are so many more who can't. Today is especially significant to me because it has been 6 years since 49 lives were stolen from us in Florida at the Pulse nightclub. I'm gay, and that could have been me. So today, I honor my nephew and the 110 people taken from us every day, along with the hundreds wounded by gun violence, and I honor them all with action. In November 2022, Iowans will vote on a proposed amendment to the Iowa Constitution for the first time since 2010. Supporters call this amendment the Right to Firearms Amendment and describe it as the addition of the Second Amendment to Iowa's Constitution. In this presentation, you'll learn why this description is misleading. Many public safety interest groups are recommending the public vote no. These groups represent public health, gun violence prevention, domestic violence intervention, and religious groups. The content you're going to hear today has been created by volunteers in the gun violence prevention movement. While we did get some input from those in the legal profession, we are not lawyers. So if you have questions about the gun violence statistics and methodology used here today, please visit everystat.org. Today we'll take a look at gun violence in Iowa, along with the legislative changes over the last 5 years that have weakened Iowa's gun safety laws. Then we'll review the ballot measure language and its potential impact based on what we've seen happen in the 3 other states that currently have a similar version of this amendment. And at the end, I hope you have a deeper understanding of why this proposed amendment is not simply the Second Amendment, but a much more extreme version. I'd like to highlight a couple gun violence demographics. In 2020, guns were the second leading cause of death among children and teens here in Iowa. Only motor vehicles caused more deaths. And nationwide, firearms are now the leading cause of death for children and teens. Black people are disproportionately impacted by gun violence here in Iowa and are 16 times more likely than white people to die by gun homicide. Black children and teens are 6 times more likely than their white peers to die by guns. Overall, gun violence costs Iowa $2 billion each year. This cost includes state medical care, first responders, ambulances, police, and criminal justice services related to gun violence. The good news is Iowa has the 42nd highest rate of gun deaths in the U.S. The bad news is this rate was lower and it continues to climb. Last year we were ranked 43rd. The chart on the right is a graph of Iowa's rate of gun deaths per 100,000 people. From 2011 to 2020, Iowa's rate of gun deaths increased 56%. However, nationwide, this increase was only 33%. During the same time period, Iowa's rate for gun suicide nearly tripled the national rate. And our rate for gun homicide more than doubled the national rate. Again, further statistics, references, and methodology on this data can be found at everystat.org. The bottom line is that Iowa is trending at an alarmingly higher rate than the national average. And many believe this is due in large part to the weakening of Iowa's gun safety laws. In 2017, Iowa passed a Stand Your Ground laws, which removed the duty to retreat before using force in self-defense. Stand Your Ground laws allow people to shoot to kill in public, even when they can safely walk away from the danger. In 2020, Iowa passed a preemptive law that effectively forced the removal of local gun safety laws. Locally, firearms are now permitted in municipal and county-owned spaces. So a child visiting the library could open an adult's purse, simply looking for a piece of gum, and instead find a loaded handgun. This preemptive law also prevents cities and counties from passing future gun safety laws, like the law recently passed in San Jose, California, that requires gun owners to purchase liability insurance. Due to the removal of Iowa's permitting laws in 2021, a firearm can be purchased without a background check and carried in public without demonstrating any proficiency or that they've even fired the gun. This is not an all-encompassing presentation, and unfortunately there are many, many factors in Iowa that contribute to gun violence. However, the passage of these laws didn't reduce gun violence. They've simply allowed more guns in public spaces. The passage of these laws is not unique to Iowa, and in fact, it's part of a larger trend across the nation. For example, as of January, 20 states already have permitless carry laws, and 12 more are actively pushing to allow people to carry concealed handguns without a permit. Training or background check. Responsible gun owners, law enforcement, and the majority of Americans all oppose permitless carry. You can learn more about this dangerous trend at everytownresearch.org. This is the language for the United States Amendment. Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. In order to place a proposed amendment to the Iowa Constitution on the ballot, it must pass 2 consecutive General Assemblies. Let's take a closer look at the actual language that was passed. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The sovereign state of Iowa affirms and recognizes this right to be a fundamental individual right. Any and all restrictions of this right shall be subject to strict scrutiny. This is not the Second Amendment. The addition of this phrase, any and all restrictions of this right shall be subject to strict scrutiny, is not in the U.S. Constitution. Strict scrutiny is what makes this proposed amendment very different and very extreme. So what is strict scrutiny, and how will it potentially change things? Very simply, strict scrutiny is a legal test. It is the highest level of scrutiny a court can use to decide whether a law is unconstitutional. And under this amendment, judges would be forced to use an unusually stringent standard of review when considering legal challenges to any restrictive gun law. University of Iowa law professor Todd Pettis said, strict scrutiny is a common constitutional standard of review to determine if individual rights are being violated. When a court applies strict scrutiny, the courts are demanding a compelling justification for interfering with those individual rights. Iowa Senator Julian Garrett believes, despite current federal law, some judges have ruled in his view against that right. He said this proposed amendment protects that right even further because we've learned over the years that not all judges respect the intent of the people that wrote the Second Amendment. Only a few states have adopted this extreme approach. Louisiana passed their amendment in 2012. Alabama and Missouri followed in 2014. This extreme approach would invite frivolous litigation, undermine decades of case law in the state courts, and put in jeopardy many moderate, common sense gun laws. Here's an example. Iowa currently doesn't allow felons to possess firearms, nor do these 3 states. Louisiana, Alabama, and Missouri all had their felon in possession laws challenged by defendants multiple times in courts. Further, Missouri taxpayers spent millions defending their existing laws against felons seeking protection under this extreme version of the Second Amendment. Polls show that the majority of Iowa voters, including gun owners, are in favor of Iowa's sensible restrictions on the purchase and use of firearms. Iowa's current laws keep felons from having firearms, keep perpetrators of domestic violence from having firearms, and keep guns out of schools. Keep restrictions on machine guns and other offensive weapons. These are the types of laws, if challenged under this extreme version of the Second Amendment, might be declared unconstitutional. Iowa Representative Stephen Holt sponsored the resolution, and moments before the legislation passed the House, ended his closing statement. Thank you to the United States Marine Corps and John Wayne for teaching me that for law-abiding citizens, the most effective gun control is a firm grip and a steady hand. Again, under this proposed amendment, judges would be forced to use an unusually narrow standard of review when considering legal challenges to any gun safety law. This narrow application could then be used by our legislature when considering future gun laws. Here are a few to consider. Iowa does not have a secure storage law. Many states have laws that require firearms to be stored locked, unloaded, and separate from ammunition. Massachusetts has one, and they're ranked 51st, with one of the lowest rates of gun deaths in the United States. Iowa does not have a red flag law. Red flag laws allow loved ones or law enforcement to intervene by petitioning a court for an order to temporarily prevent someone in crisis from accessing guns. These laws are effective because when a person is in crisis and considering harming themselves or others, family members and law enforcement are often the first people to see the warning signs. Iowa no longer requires permitting. However, nearly 70% of Iowans, including gun owners, supported Iowa's permitting law. If we're ever in a position to reinstate a permitting law or consider other gun safety laws, it's quite possible they would be declared unconstitutional under this amendment. And that's the point. The point of this is to restrict future gun control bills. This is from Iowa State Senator Jason Schultz, who supports the ballot measure. We mentioned that Iowa ranks 42nd for rate of gun deaths in the United States. This is what gun violence looks like in the 3 states with a similar amendment. According to everystat.org, Missouri has the 5th highest rate of gun deaths in the U.S., Louisiana has the 3rd highest rate, and Alabama has the 4th highest rate. This includes all gun deaths: homicide, suicide, unintentional shootings, police shootings, along with undetermined gun deaths. A recent CNN article reported on a study that found there is a direct correlation in states with weaker gun laws and higher rates of gun deaths. Iowa Senator Kevin Kinney is a 28-year veteran of law enforcement and spoke against this proposed amendment. Not many of you have ever had to sit and look down the barrel of a gun. I have on a number of occasions. And when you're placing strict scrutiny into the Constitution, you're going to be diminishing our laws that are on the books. And to me, this is going to make law enforcement more dangerous. Let's look at the other groups that lobbied against the passage of this proposed amendment. As I mentioned in the beginning, voting no on this extreme version of the Second Amendment aligns you with this broad group that lobbied against the proposed ballot measure. These groups represent gun safety, gun violence prevention, public safety, public health, women's health and safety, religious faiths, and the League of Women Voters of Iowa. Leslie Carpenter is the founder of Iowa Mental Health Advocacy and lobbied against the proposed ballot measure. She has an adult son with a schizoaffective disorder and has been very open about her family's challenges with access to mental health services here in Iowa. She works to educate legislators and law enforcement about implementing successful programs operating in other parts of the country. Leslie states extreme risk protection orders, also known as red flag laws, have proven to reduce suicides in other states, as temporary removal of guns is the #1 way to prevent suicide by gun. As a serious brain disorders advocate, my first concern with the proposed ballot measure is that it would prevent life-saving gun legislation like this in Iowa. Connie Ryan is the executive director of the Interfaith Alliance of Iowa, another organization that lobbied against the proposed amendment. It goes far beyond what the Second Amendment does. It really would do great potential damage to the laws that we have in the state, that responsible gun owners want to have, to keep that balance of rights and public health and safety. The proposed amendment on the ballot is not the Second Amendment. The language, any and all restrictions of this right shall be subject to strict scrutiny, makes this an extreme approach that will invite frivolous litigation and will most certainly put in jeopardy Iowa's current and future gun safety laws. Under this proposed amendment, judges would be forced to use an unusually stringent standard of review when considering legal challenges to any restrictive gun law. And this proposed amendment won't make Iowa safer. Representative Beth Wessel-Kroschel said the amendment would likely take down every reasonable gun law in Iowa if it raises the standard beyond the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The current language in the U.S. Constitution regarding the Second Amendment already protects the right to bear arms, and the strict scrutiny language is unnecessary. Every American should have the freedom to be safe in our homes, neighborhoods, and communities. Freedom to live our lives without the constant threat of gun violence hanging over our heads. So I'm asking you today, when you hear news outlets reporting the ballot measure as just the Second Amendment, please correct them. Strict scrutiny isn't in the U.S. Constitution, and it goes beyond the Second Amendment. Make sure they are reporting on the impact this extreme approach will have on current and future gun safety laws. I'd like to share this information with others, and I'm happy to present this again and again to anyone that's interested. Ballot measures are very difficult to defeat, and as we've seen today, the language is oftentimes misleading. Many voters do not turn the ballot over or simply refrain from voting for fear of voting the wrong way. With supporters calling this effort the Freedom Amendment and just the Second Amendment, we have our work cut out for us. So at the very least, vote no on November 8th, and if you want to do more, invite others to attend future presentations. Again, hold the media accountable that this is not just the Second Amendment. Write a letter to the editor, host a presentation with your club or volunteer group, ask related organizations to approve a statement or pass a resolution opposing the ballot measure. And if you're on Twitter, tweet using the IALegis hashtag. Many of the groups that lobbied against this amendment, along with their supporters, have formed a PAC called Iowans for Responsible Gun Laws. They believe this amendment puts the right to carry a gun above the right to safety. We must defeat the reckless gun amendment that would prohibit responsible gun laws in Iowa. And Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America is a nonprofit, nonpartisan grassroots movement of Americans fighting for public safety measures that can protect people from gun violence. And there are several communities here in Iowa, Johnson County being one, that have active groups. So thank you for your time today. This is my email address, but I would be happy to answer any questions or take any feedback.
Appreciate his comments, but I noticed in the groups that were supporting no, I didn't see any law enforcement agencies. Is there any way, you know, are they supporting of this? Do you know?
So their lobbyists lobbied undecided. So they did not vote for it, or they didn't lobby for it or lobby against it. They were undecided. So yes, there are law enforcement officials that oppose this, and it's our responsibility to find them and highlight them and give them the opportunity to speak out. Sheriffs, of course, here in Iowa are elected officials, and many of them in Iowa would be in favor of this.
Why are the police not? Yeah. Why are the police not against it?
I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I don't know. I think as a lobby, they won't take a stance as a group, but individually, you can certainly find people that would be willing to speak out.
What was the Facebook group? I didn't catch that.
For
the Iowans for yes.
This content was specifically on the ballot measure, but I'd also be happy to answer any questions about what gun violence prevention work looks like here in our community. Our Johnson County group is very, very active. We do a lot of the things that the church does. We participate in pride parades, and we go out and table at events and connect with the community. We support community partners like Dream City, Domestic Violence Intervention Program, United Action for Youth. We know that those groups can provide an alternative path or disrupt the cycle of gun violence. So we support them here in our community. Yes.
Do you have any involvement with NAMI?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And Leslie Carpenter is very involved with NAMI as well. So we do support their annual walk. We go out and table there, and we sponsor our own team to go out there. So yes, suicide prevention is definitely something we're involved with as well.
You talked about local Iowa politics. What about national?
National, I mean, unfortunately, mass shootings is something that tend to motivate people to come find us, and so we're kind of using this wave to direct people to contact their senators, and it's working. I don't know if you read recently or saw that there was a Wyoming senator that's actually considering, voting in favor of red flag laws and raising the age to purchase an AR-15 to 21. So there are a lot of things that we can do. But yes, so nationally, we're just putting pressure on our senators. Yeah. Don't be afraid. Ask
Any
questions.
other thoughts or comments or?
I think it's just so compelling, and just your delivery here really shows
Yeah,
us
really.
how critical it is.
Well,
Thank
it's
you.
I'm just the talking head up here. This has definitely been a community project. We started, creating this slide deck presentation in August of last year, keeping it very, very bare bones, just the facts, right? And then we started out doing, presentations kind of within our own groups, and connected with the League of Women Voters, Johnson County Interfaith Coalition with their voter education committee, and they've really been instrumental in helping us, kind of widen the scope of what we're talking about and providing a little more information about what has happened in Iowa the past 5 years. So you'll see the flyers there, the formatting of all that. I just provided the statistics. Johnson County Interfaith Coalition, they have voter education brochures. It's going to be translated into about 5 different languages. I've already had people in other counties that have predominantly Spanish-speaking communities, reach out for Spanish versions as well.
It is a very fine presentation. I hope that it can be seen by lots of people.
That's the goal. So I'm trying to get out there in every possible way.
Thank you.
So we do have an in-person meeting at the Iowa City Public Library on June 27th, and then there will be another virtual presentation through Moms Demand Action on July 14th. So if you know other people that would want to preview this and consider for their groups or organizations, those would be good opportunities. There's also a recorded version at the League of Women Voters Johnson County Facebook page. Yes.
Can you tell us how will in the ballot will be the wording so we can understand what it's all about? You know what I mean?
Yep. Let me scroll back up here. So this is the actual ballot language. This is what will be on the ballot. Yes. And so our initial concern was that, people who are not involved in this work here in Iowa, they're gonna read this and they're gonna think, yeah, I want my gun laws to be strict, when that's not at all what it means. Yes?
The sovereign word in there, is that another flag of some kind that because that just seems unusual.
Again, I'm not a lawyer. I think there are a lot of things wrong with this, all the way around, absolutely. I'm not a lawyer and I can't speak to that.
Can you flip back to the US amendment?
Some people are concerned with the fact that the well-regulated militia part is not in. Again, federal is going to oversee, but we just don't know, what's going to happen.
What are other churches doing? And also, do you have any suggestions for something we could do as a church?
I can get you the images to that information. Like I said, Johnson County Interfaith Coalition, of which I believe First Presbyterian Church is a part of, will have those on their websites, just promoting it. Yes, I'm going to be presenting this to the JKIC board, and I believe I will be in front of the UUS congregation as well. So it's happening incrementally, which is why we started early.
Is there anything we should be? Is there any doing thing we could do?
Join us. Just get out there and join us for the July 4th parade. Help us with visibility efforts. We're tabling at Juneteenth. We're going to be tabling at the farmers market as capacity allows us to do, and just really continue to attend these presentations and understand how we talk about this. We don't use words like gun control. We don't want to control anybody. We just want responsible gun owners. So we talk about gun safety and gun violence prevention. We don't call things accidents. We believe they can be prevented. So we call them unintentional shootings.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole education component about how we talk about these efforts. We have an educational program called Be Smart, which is SMART is an acronym that revolves around secure storage and just empowering parents to ask about unsecured weapons in other people's homes. That message has been embraced by the Iowa City Community School District. They passed a resolution and they're going to share that message with parents every year when they register their kids for school. That is huge for here in our community, because if we can just remove that one component, it would really make us a lot safer. The demographic of our youth, say 14 to 24 is the fastest growing demographic of gun deaths.
Well, thank you so much. Are there any?
I think you said, but does it just take a simple majority to pass that?
It does. One vote over.
Oh, okay.
To pass or to fail. Yes.
Any ideas of how to move beyond Johnson County? I have a lot more concerns about other counties.
We're doing it as best we can with limited capacity. I am doing a presentation with the Domestic Violence Intervention Program Board, and they cover, I believe, about 8 counties. So hoping to get out there to them, and then potentially springboard off of that and do more presentations.
The groups that have already endorsed, did I see both the United Methodist and the Roman Catholic?
Yes, they have lobbyists that lobbied against this when it was going through the Iowa legislature.
I live in Riverside, that's why I asked.
Yeah,
Do Presbyterians be part of that?
I didn't see
I
a
didn't see
lobbyist
us on
that
the
filed either for or against it or undecided. So I don't know if they have
Did you see this today?
no.
Yeah, this is about the ballot measure. Yeah. Perfect timing for
Yeah.
today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you again so much.